Another fly I'd really like to show is what I call the Target Beetle, a very simple fly, but please don't be fooled by how simple the tang is, because it can be devastating in the right circumstances. It's our kind of bread and butter in the summer, because the rivers I fish, and even the upland tarns and reservoirs and lakes for that matters, have a lot of bracken, unspoilt, and it's a breeding ground for beetles, so we often see them in the air. This time I've stepped up to the Semperfli 8/0 black classic wax thread, just a little bit heavier than the 12/0 for the reason that when we're catching in the foam, we don't want the thread to act like a cheese wire and cut through it. So again, it's just a little bit broader and will secure the foam that bit easier. So I'm using a size 14. We can tie this in 12s. We can tie it in 10s, and it's going to cover the likes of the Bracken Clock Beetle or the Cocky Bondu, if you prefer to call it that. There's any number of beetles. We can tie it in 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s and 20s. The dominant sizes for me are 14s, 16s and 18s. I'm on a size 14. This is a Partridge SLD2, and we'll just catch on our thread. As before, we'll just take the tension off there. This is vital with this fly because, like I said, we want that broader profile of the thread so it doesn't cut through the foam when we come in to catch the foam. What we need to do first, you can probably see just that thread opening out there. Hopefully I can see it. So if I can see it, you folks can see it as well. That's nice and broad. Put down a base. This is important, as I was saying, because if we just catch on our foam, it's going to slip about. Just about to the bend. I always go slightly round, even though we want the beetle sort of level. It's because when you pull that the shell back over, it'll just ease it up a wee bit. So we can back wind. I come up 2/3 or thereabouts. Let that hang. For the shell back and the head of the fly and the underbody, which is quite important, you'll see in a moment, I'm using the Semperfli 3.5mm black foam sheet. Really good foam. It's quite pliable. Some foams are a little bit too hard. They don't compress readily, but this one's really compresses. And what I've done, this one's in the packet. I've got one. I'm doing a Blue Peter here, folks. Here's one I've prepared earlier, and I just took a strip off a foam there. That's a 4mm wide strip of the 3.5mm thick Semperfli black foam. What I'll do, I'll pop a point onto the foam here just for catching in. You'll see there's a point, and we'll just catch that in. It's just that little bit easier to catch in because here we're going to create a head and a little bit of dubbing, so I don't want too much bulk. Catch that in, and what we'll do is just take open turns, an extra wrap, an open turn, an extra wrap. This creates little pillows of foam, if you like, that consequently act as extra buoyancy, because as good as foam is, and hopefully we'll catch lots of fish with our fly, eventually the foam will tear and you'll lose the back of the fly. However, with this buoyant underbody, you've still got the flotation there. So just be mindful of that. What I like to do when we get to this junction, obviously we've got those little sort of pillows that I was talking about. Just for extra belt and braces and security, I'll knock on a 3-turn whip finish. It just helps or prevents the rear of the fly or the foam opening up there. And you see for the next stage, obviously we don't want to compact the body too much, otherwise it flattens these little sort of pockets of buoyancy. What I like to use for the body is the Semperfli synthetic peacock herl. I'm using the 2mm. This is my preferred colour, if I'm honest, which is the peacock green. We also do it in peacock black and the peacock blue as well. The blue's fantastic if you're trying to imitate blue bottles, which incidentally this beetle pattern will cover that situation quite easily. The beauty about this, again, it's a synthetic peacock. It says what it does on the tin, but the actual beauty about it, apart from the glisten and shine, which it doesn't lose, is how durable it is. We've all had problems with peacock herl in the past where we wind it on. I've tried varnish underneath. I've tried wrapping the peacock herl round the thread to create a rope, which works, but inevitably at some stage these fibres fray from the trout's teeth and we lose that sort of iridescent peacock sheen that we're after. So this bypasses all of that, and we catch this in a couple of lazy turns. Well, I'll put 3, and just be careful. What I'm doing is retracing my steps, dropping into between those pockets there up to the junction where we're going to bring the shell back over to create the head. Again, just be mindful here, don't be too enthusiastic of binding down the synthetic peacock herl. It's just loose turns. Don't worry about it unwrapping, we'll secure it here, and then we've got the shell back as well, which helps hold it. This material is just fantastic. 3 turns, 1 in front, feed in with our scissors and a push. There we go. Simple as that. Very simple, very, very durable. Bring the shell back over now. 2 lazy turns. Just making sure this thread is flat. Gauging it for the head as well. You'll see now what I was talking about earlier. We went round the bend and that's just edged it up forward, and we've got exactly what I want there. The sort of portly profile of a beetle. What I prefer to do now, you've got 2 options. You can knock on a little bit of dubbing, bring the foam over to create a head, but my preferred way is actually to come up to the eye. We can see there. And this will create our head. We're sort of folding this back. What we're going to do in essence, you'll see in a moment, is fold this back to create a head. I called it a Target Beetle because the first Beetles I used to tie many years ago were fantastic, great, but the solo riding, you'd often cast them out, especially on the upland towns where on a breezy day, and you just lose sight of them. So I put in a little sighter wing. And what I'm using is the Semperfli poly yarn. Several colours available. We've got chartreuse, pink, orange. Orange is one of my favourite. White is a good one, especially if you're on the river and casting into the shady areas. I like the orange because it shows up in white foamy water quite well, where you can lose the fleck of a white-winged fly. So we'll just cut off a short length of this. I tease out the fibres just so they fluff up quite readily like that. That little bit of fly tying spit that always helps. Another tip for beginners, this one really. Sometimes positioning your materials, rather than take lazy turns or soft turns, which occasionally will pull the material you try to catch in off top dead centre and it'll roll a wee bit. What I'm going to do is just use the weight of the bobbin, and you can see I can position it exactly where I want it. A couple of turns forward to bind that down. We'll double this over, and you can see instantly we've got a gorgeous wing on there, a lovely sighter wing. We'll leave this long at the moment. A mistake is to cut it too short, because then if it's short, the fibres sometimes sort of want to interact with the whip finish, which we definitely don't want. Back to our dubbing. As I said earlier, we can use the Semperfli ice dubbing in the blue, which is great. I quite like that. Small amount of dubbing as per the apt, which we're tying this weekend. Tune in to see that fly as well. Again, I'm not too precious about making it super compact. I want some fibres just radiating out. Create a bulbous head. Come back to this junction there where you've caught the wing in. You can see I'm just knocked off the tension of the thread so it lies flat to finish the fly. Pull over your Semperfli foam there and create a nice bulbous head. That's looking great, folks. I'm very happy with that. You've got two options now. You can knock on a turn behind or whip finish. I'm actually going to whip finish, and then we can take off the tag end of the foam, and also length, get our tuft or sighter wing to length. Again, it's the 3 or 4 turn. Just to prove I can count, I've gone to 4 turns. A little bitty bead of varnish again, just stroke it onto the thread, and as per the apt, it just gets dragged up into the whip finish there, you'll see. Again, we're tying fishing flies here. We always strive for neatness, etc., but they need to be robust as well. So it's a double whip finish for me. There's our 2 whip finishes. Just crank that over, feed in with my scissors as before, slight push. Need our foam. I'll just stretch that a little bit, and you can actually see it just tensioning the hook as well. Push down, take a cut. And now our wing is ready for the length. We don't want it too long. That's about right, that's perfect actually. If it's too long, it'll just topple the fly onto its side a little bit. So folks, fishing this fly. Okay, we're all brought up, if you like, to present dry flies with a degree of delicacy, but for this one in particular, you can afford to make it plop. Good news for beginners, because I knew when I was starting out fly fishing, casts were wayward, they were all over the place, they were awkward, flies slapping down. In fact, it can be a good thing to just present this fly with a little bit of a plop, especially if you're casting under the trees. That applies to lakes as well. There's many towns where I live where there's an avenue of trees just reaching over, and the beetles are dropping in, and the trout just cruise up and down the edge. And they're listening. Trust me, they are listening, and they pick it up with the lateral line. Any disturbance, they're looking for a fly. So don't be afraid to present it with a flop. I prefer a single fly, whether it's on the lake, the reservoir, or on the river as well. Again, leader length will vary dependent on conditions. If you're on an upland town, for example, or an exposed water, you don't want too long a leader, because it'll just tend to crease or double back on you. 9 foot, sometimes even 8 foot. You know, I've been in some really breezy conditions and the leader's been as short of 6 foot. So don't be afraid just to crop it back in those kind of conditions. Hope you enjoyed the fly. Go out, use it, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.